In this episode, we're going to talk about strategies on how to successfully apply for our MFA program and ways to navigate graduate stipends, grants, scholarships, and fellowships.
This is The Hidden Critique, where we discuss art, race, and higher education at the intersection of an MFA. I'm Marlon Tobias, pronouns he, him.
And I'm Krystle and Lemonias, pronouns she, her.
Welcome to our show. All right, episode 2. What's going on, Chris?
All is well, trying to get it all together and reflect on all these things that we've experienced and help the listeners. How about you?
Yeah, I definitely agree. This episode is definitely one I think I'm really most excited about because it's really, we were really delving in deep on just how to mentally prepare overall in the application process. The application process is very daunting. There's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of things that you have to do and a lot of research that, you find yourself having to do, not realizing that you have to do it, right? Which can really incite a lot of anxiety. So I'm really excited to really get in deep with this discussion just in hopes to kind of quell that anxiety for some listeners.
Absolutely.
But of course, because mental health is important in life, especially when you're living the artist and entrepreneur lifestyle, Chris, how is your heart?
My heart is feeling full, warm, and optimistic.
Wonderful.
How about
wonderful.
you?
It's going to be a transparent moment for me,
Yeah.
but I'm feeling sentimental. So we are.
Really?
Yes, yeah. So we are actually recording on the week of the year anniversary of my mother's passing. So
Oh.
there are, of course, a lot of emotions. This has been quite a year for me and my family. But I just recently watched a documentary on Tupac and his mother, Feni Shakur, and she talked about how after his death, she rejoiced because he was free. He was free from the confines of all the limitations of what it means to be human, right? And I liken that to my mother. She was, towards the end really sick. And I feel that it is in this time most important to remember her legacy and rejoice. And Afeni Shakur said, I rejoice when I'm not crying. And I'm not much of a crier, but
Yeah.
I take time to really rejoice and really be thankful for all that she has instilled in me and my brothers, and also just thinking about her encouragement for me to pursue my creative career in creativity. So I'm in a sensual mood right now, and I feel really grateful and blessed that I'm doing what she wanted me to do with my life.
That's so beautiful, Marlon. I know that so much of your work surrounds inspiration from your mom and your family. So hearing that is really, really nourishing. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you, thank you. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into this, right? Let's teach these kids what it means to apply with a certain level of confidence when they get that seat at the table, when they're sitting at the table, right?
Right.
So when talking about strategies to successfully apply for an MFA, we know that there is a plethora of information available that discusses how to build the perfect application packet, how to, make sure that you have well documented photos of your work and all of that. So we want to start at making that assumption that you have already built a strong portfolio, a clear statement of intent that has been reviewed and edited and looked over by former trusted professors of yours and also trusted mentors. So the purpose of today's discussion is to focus on your worth as a prospective student and to empower you on the value that you bring to the program during the application process. So, we're trying to remind you of pretty much who you are. in this
Mm-hmm.
process, right, Chris?
Absolutely. I think something that we underestimate when we are applying to these programs and then get accepted to these programs is that we already have what it takes to succeed in this realm of work. It's a matter of polishing those skills. And you'll be surprised once you actually get there, the skills that in your interview that you showcased as your most well perfected skills and what you can bring to this institution is essentially what you are then being put into. So if you had any experience in teaching prior to going to a grad program that offers you a stipend for that, you're going to be putting that to work. And in some cases, you may not get much instruction on how to do that, because most programs don't actually teach you how to teach. So I think it's really, really in your best interest to center yourself and your power in this process that you are also bringing something to the table that they need.
I love how you stated centering yourself, because that's the most important thing. We can easily come into this process from a place of a deficit of like, what don't I have? What qualifications don't I have? And that can really impact your confidence when it's time to negotiate. And
Absolutely.
it's important to remember that anything is up for negotiation. And it doesn't matter how old you are, how much experience you may or may not have, you have the power to negotiate. And that's what I really want to stress as we
Mm-hmm.
delve into this conversation. But in order to also get to that place, there is kind of work that you have to do, not only tangible work like creating art, but also like mental work, like you said, as far as
Mm-hmm.
recentering yourself. And I think an
Right.
important thing to really resolve before getting into the application process is evaluating what you want out of your art career. Because, like we discussed in episode 1, to be an artist, there's no true definition or singular linear paved road to success as an artist. There are so
Right.
many different avenues that you can take in order to be successful. So, you really want to understand and have a strong idea of how you want to or where you want to take your art career. Do you want to teach in higher education? Or do you want to be a working artist? To teach in higher education, yes, you must have an MFA in order to teach on the collegiate level. Or do you just want to do art? So those are two very important questions, because some grad programs do incorporate the teaching aspect as far as you being a TA or you being an instructor on record, which is what our program offered. So we walked out of our program being in many ways certified to teach on the collegiate level, and our experience we can put on our resumes and our CVs as instructors on record, which is holds a lot more weight than being a teacher's assistant. Like, we ran our classrooms. Or, do you just really want to take your artistry by storm and not really want to teach on the collegiate level? So there are programs that are also tailored to really just really focusing
Research.
more on your research and and you developing primarily as a working artist. So I think those are
Mm-hmm.
that process and that time to really sit down and evaluate, what do I want to do with my creativity, with my art career, is pivotal before even starting the application process.
And I would add to that, Marlon, and in that evaluation, that thinking about the type of culture in contemporary art that you may be interested in delving into, because every university has a different flavor, if you will, a different vibe, a different maybe genre of contemporary art that is, I guess what they're pushing, what they're selling as their brand, if you will. And I think it's important to, in some ways, grasp what a university's brand is
Mm.
and then see if that is what you would like to be a part of. Because a school in the north, maybe, New York, versus a school, say in the South, Midwest, has a totally different culture. And then they have a total different specification as to how they go about their environment of both research and their environment of teaching. And if that program is whether interdisciplinary or conceptual. And so I think understanding where your art fits into the contemporary, art market, if you will, is what you need to answer to yourself to then be able to see how you can engage in this grad program and how to best tailor what you have to offer to a program.
Definitely, definitely. And yeah, I definitely love that sentiment too. This is all meant to empower the prospective student, and I want to be sure to define it as a prospective student, not an applicant, because when you think of yourself as a prospective student, you're telling yourself that you have agency in this process rather than you just being an applicant and you kind of being at the whims of the person looking at your application, right? So that's also important too, to really refrain your language in stating that you are a prospective student, therefore I have skin in the game.
Exactly. Words to create context of empowerment.
Yes, yes. Okay, so now that made the decision to apply to grad school, you want to further your degree, you're confident that you want to make a career out of being an artist. Now it's time to do a little research to view the lay
Mm-hmm.
of the land and research the top schools or even which schools lend the best results for success. So we're narrowing it down.
Absolutely. And, I think just thinking about what we've shared in the past episodes regarding how much it costs to fund your education and then how much your potential earning is outside of school. The goal here is to lessen the amount of debt you have to incur. That way you have more room to not work multiple gigs and multiple jobs in order to make time to do your creation. So that says you want to go into a program that is offering you the most scholarships, the most opportunity financially to make space after graduation for creating artwork. I came across this article on ArtNet titled, "Is Getting an MFA Worth the Price?" It shares that of the top 20 graduate programs represented in the study across the nation, early career success is, you know, it's rare. No more than two artists on the list achieved notoriety based on art sales, coming straight out of their institution
Program.
that they attended. And many of those schools only had one successful, what they quote unquote successful artist that is really prominent from the program. That makes these schools' ability to predict early career success fairly random, since a single sale by an artist from another institution could shake up the ranking entirely. I say all this to say that though a school that might be Ivy League, very prominent in what has been said that many artists come out of, and they have success and the name is worth so much in the realm of contemporary art, on paper, they all can't really prove that they are the school to go to get the best job, have the art career where you are going to be the most successful as an artist. They can't make any of this stipulation. So it puts a little bit more power in your hand, knowing that they cannot prove this, meaning that a state school possibly could be the best option for you if you are savvy enough, if you have a lot of information and resources available to you. You could still become successful as a working artist, but at the same time, not incur the amount of debt it takes to go to some of these top 20 graduate programs. You have anything to add to that, Marlon? Any thoughts that you had?
Yeah, definitely. It's all about working the system or what system is best for you to work. And the more you are able to work that system and utilize as many resources as possible, and also do a little bit on your end to make sure that you're successful also plays a major factor into your success as an artist. Because the school we went to, as far as success rates or students coming out as full-fledged full artists, was, I mean, looking at it in hindsight, was kind of few and far between. There was one individual that had graduated right before we started that started his ideal career as a practicing artist, and he got gallery
Mm-hmm.
representation and was showing internationally and was really starting
Right.
to make waves.
5 years
Then,
before that, there was another student, right? So
right. Yeah.
it's
So
really up in the air.
yeah, as far as like the numbers, it didn't really show. However, I mean, in the case of you, through your cunning of utilizing the resources around you, and then you also put me on game too. You, just to be honest, because I was coming into grad school like just all green and just really not knowing much of the demographics of the art industry. So you definitely became like somewhat of a mentor. And I was just looking at the moves that she was making, like, okay, I gotta make those moves. Okay, gotcha. But doing that also weighs heavily on your success as
Yes.
an artist. And even though statistically it didn't show a lot of great number of success, you still graduated represented by a gallery and also teaching on the collegiate level and having all of these projects in line and all these qualifications under your belt. And on my end, teaching on the collegiate level, I was getting solo shows
Right.
and building up my CV too. And that was also in part to what we did on our end to be successful. So
Right.
it's
Right.
definitely, like you said, the benefit of pursuing an art degree is in ways, no matter where you go, you can make it work and you can be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think which is what we are helping our listeners with is strategic planning. And oftentimes this is used in organizing, whether it is communities or community development stuff or in unions and stuff like that. But seeing how to strategically organize your life can be pivotal to how the odds will be in your favor career wise, because there is a downside to all careers out there. There is a certain amount of individuals chosen to go in any field that requires specification in how work is done. But if you are able to find a way to stand out of the crowd and strategically expand your expertise and your capabilities in your field, you have a high likelihood of success. And that is what we have done to some degree and still growing into, and what we encourage everyone to do as well.
Definitely. Since the numbers are, like you said, arbitrary, right? The next step is, where to apply. Now, we applied to a institution that offered tuition waivers, which is really beneficial as far as accruing school debt
Yes.
and taking out loans, which also opened up for when you do get scholarships and grants and fellowships, that all will come to you for your cost of living and not additional charges to your program or to your degree, right?
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
to look at fully funded MFA programs, there is a list that profellow.com offers, and that will be listed in our credits. And that gives an entire updated list of all of the colleges across the country that offer tuition waivers as a benefit of their program, basically saying that they'll waive the cost of schooling, so any additional money really goes back to you.
And with the caveat of often these programs take you on as a GA, a graduate assistant, which means that, as we shared a little bit earlier, that you become an instructor of record. If it's a 2-year program, you are possibly teaching as an assistant for your first semester, and then 3 semesters out of that, or maybe 2 semesters out of your time at the institution, you are running your own class. You're responsible responsible for a course, in some cases, two courses. And in the hindsight, you are building your expertise in teaching in higher ed. But in addition to that, you're also able to waive the cost of what it would be to go to a university and pay tuition fully. And so there's a trade-off. And oftentimes that trade-off is not, would say, fully equitable, because you think about it, how much does the university pay for whether adjunct or a full-time professor to teach some of these same courses? Yeah, they get it on the cheap. They get it on the cheap to add some GAs to the list, but
Right.
it's still a benefit to us. It's still a benefit. We can't lie. It is a benefit to potentially leave an institution with much less debt, or in some cases, no debt at all.
Definitely, definitely. And I like that you said that that's the trade-off and that you made that point. So with these schools being a tuition waiver, odds are that they will require you to teach their undergrad courses.
Mm-hmm.
And that also could aid you down the road, especially if you do see yourself teaching on the collegiate level. So that's
right.
that's the symbiotic relationship that in some ways you kind of want to look for. But of course, like Chris said, there are other equity components that you also want to resolve and kind of come to a place with, which is also something that we're definitely going to discuss later on in this season. But those are things that you want to also look for and consider when you're applying.
Yes, absolutely. And something else within our application tips and tricks that we want you to actively engage in is visiting these institutions on your list that
Visit
you
the
want to
school,
apply.
walk the streets, walk the halls, visit.
There
Yes.
is nothing you can do that is going to be more beneficial to you understanding if you connect to the people there, whether it is the faculty or the current students, than going to the actual place.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And that too in itself, 1 or 2 days on campus, it's even hard to tell if you really belong there. But you can get a gist, and with a little bit more work, which we're going to discuss in a bit, you can make a really educated, informed guess as to will I thrive in this place?
Mm-hmm. Definitely,
right?
definitely.
Something that we thought about was research the school, research the history of that program, and what is the word on the street about this program. We got to do some snooping, guys. We got to do some snooping.
Yes, this is the time when you put your antlers out there and become like an undercover spy, right?
Yes.
And you did a much better job of investigative work during the application process than I did, because like I said, I just applied to the one school. We met during your visit where they were doing their end of the semester reviews, and you were in there, Chris. Like you were so in there. I literally thought you were already in the program. I literally thought you were a student. Like the way you were
That's so funny.
engaging with people, and you were like you just kind of looked like you found your place of comfort, and you were like it was almost like you were giving like a death stare to the faculty and to the students as much as they were trying to feel you out, and you were like, no, I'm here, so like what are we gonna what's all this really about? And I loved that about you, like looking back at it, so looking back at that experience. But
well, visiting the school that we decided to go to was a big deal for me because I was coming from a couple states away. And so I had to figure out if this big move was going to be worth it financially for me. And, at the end of the day, I made good of it, but through trials and tribulations, but the resources that I was told and what I demanded while I was there. And so that is what made it good for me. And that is because of the work that I did ahead of time to acknowledge that I could access those things on the ground. Something that I did while I did my visit was talk to students. So the university often puts you in touch, the director or the coordinator of the program that invites you to come and visit once you are accepted to a program is, or prior to accepting to a program, is often going to put you in touch with a student that is, their spokesperson for the program. Yay, they're all hurrah for the program. And yeah, they may tell you some good things and some useful things to know, but you gotta consider them the advertisement for the institution.
The token.
So yeah. So do you get a full gist of what is going on? No.
Probably not.
You got to go find a student that either looks a little bit disgruntled or, like when you look at Amazon reviews, you look at the couple best at the top, and then you go find that 1-2 stars to understand what is the worst case scenario here.
Right.
Go find that person. And sometimes they will be at the school themselves, or you may then have to go snoop after your visit to go find that person and be in touch with them via virtually somehow.
So yeah, I would love for you to unpack that a little bit more, and reflecting back whether it was when you visited the school that we went to or other schools, what lengths did you go to find that person, that bad review person, to get the nitty gritty?
So, okay, so I would ask for, like, if they wanted to go to have tea, or if I could do a studio visit. That way I could get them isolated. To ask the questions that I really want to ask. I want to understand what is happening here. What am I not seeing that is actually here? And, you are able to get their full experience. What are the things that are good? What are the things that are actually working? And what are the things that are cautionary tales that you possibly will encounter? That person, I would suggest, should maybe be of your demographic, possibly socioeconomically. And for me, being a Black woman and an immigrant, I was looking for someone that I was hoping for a Black woman if that was possible, but I was settled for just any Black person, a person of color, like anybody on the spectrum. Just right. Push me in touch on one of them. And I was lucky enough to find a Black man, of which I previously learned through someone else was still at the program. So I was literally looking for him, and I found him, and I was able to get a studio visit with him, and learned a lot about his experience, and of which his experience at the time was very challenging. And so, through that, I said, okay, but the resources that I wanted to access was at this institution in terms of there's not necessarily the studio space, but some of the specifically printmaking facilities that I was interested in. And so I made an exception, knowing that, one, the school had a union, so I would know how to fight some of these issues that he was experiencing. The school also had DEI, so I knew that I could go find DEI if I needed. So knowing your resources and knowing how you would potentially address situations is important. And yeah, that's how I figured it out.
But I love that. And also, you not only looking at the program, because sometimes, especially when there's a lot of research to do, sometimes you just focus on the program and not the institution as a whole. And knowing what offices and what resources they have outside of the department, that in case some go down, you can reach out to them and not be almost cornered or feel bullied by interdepartmental factions. So like that was really important, and I love that, and I love that you gathered that from, or that's what you were looking for when you were on the hunt to like get the real the real dirt on what's going on around in this place.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, every school has their gist, every school has their challenges, but the whole point is don't make them challenges bother you. Like, how can you get through this space with all that you need to thrive outside of this place, building both your skills and your capacity to work independently. That's what you're trying to do there. Yeah, fun and games, you meet people, you make friends, this and that. But the point is, you're trying to make a life for yourself. And so that
Hmm.
comes first.
And also thinking about while you're doing this investigative work, like paying attention to how they treat you during the visit, which is
Absolutely.
also just equally as telling to the experience as much as just seeing the campus itself, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know you weren't in this conversation, but while we were at our institution that we went to, there was another student that boasted on how they not only they got, I guess, a plane ticket to come to the school, they also were put in a hotel and like we all were shown around, or most of us were shown around, but those were two benefits that I didn't even know that people could get.
And this is
I,
during the
I,
application process. This is they're
this is
trying
through the
to.
process. I am not sure if all of this is true. This is all he said, she said. But I mean, I don't know why that person would say otherwise. But it's possible. It seems that if the school likes you that much in terms of your work and their interest is high to want to engage with you, they will put out the money to get you there,
Hmm.
it appears.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's definitely a part of the recruitment process. And if they're,
Mm-hmm.
because they're, they're looking for students too, and they're looking, I'm sure, for the best students for them. And, they're willing to invest in that recruitment process. That's definitely realistic. I mean, you just think about, sports when these sports programs are recruiting students, the ones that they really want, they're going to show them the glitz and the glam and give them the first class treatment, and that creates a tier system of,
Mm-hmm.
okay, well, we want to show them the moon and the stars, but this athlete maybe we're maybe unsure about, but they're still viable, so we'll give them, this little tour or whatever, and then everyone else can kind of fend for themselves.
Yeah, true. But I think making this known to our listeners helps them to advocate, to ask for these things. And if a school is not necessarily interested in giving you at least something, whether it is they're going to you take care of the flight if you need a flight to go there, or they're going to compensate you for your commute, whatever that commute may be, and another person takes care of the actual accommodation, or they do both, that goes to show how much you are valued in the ranking as to
mhm.
how much they want you. And I think having that understanding and shopping elsewhere, shopping around, helps you to gather where you possibly want to go and where you'll possibly have the best experience and the best bang for your buck. Because let's not forget, there's still dollars and cents being exchanged for this experience. So yeah, I think it makes it a little bit more of a better situation for yourself if you come in with that understanding.
Yes, and I love that, like not being afraid to ask those questions. Like everything is up for negotiation from
Absolutely.
day one. And when I mean
Mm-hmm.
day one, I don't mean day one of you being in the program. I mean day one of the application process of
Mm-hmm.
you looking at a school online and saying, hey, this could be a school that I could be successful at, and negotiating from that point to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that you are being, and this, it's definitely an exercise of you practicing your worth and having people treat you like your worth.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And then the next thing is researching the faculty at the institution. Have you heard of their work? What have they done on their CVs? What can you really learn from them?
Who is you? Who are you?
Yes. Who are these people? What can you gather? What value will you have from working with these people when you get out into your career?
What does your
Because
work look like? What does
they're,
your work look like? Do
yes,
I want you critiquing my work? That's the question.
especially, especially coming from a background that is not centered in society. We want to make sure that the faculty has prior knowledge, just basic prior knowledge too, and is able to give you relevant and just recent critique to assist you in your growth. And
Definitely.
so I believe reviewing that and seeing how, if you like their work or if there's something you can learn from these faculties' work, is important because they are going to become a part of your network once you leave that institution. And the part of you going to a grad program is to broaden your network in the arts, to develop contacts of how you're going to expand in your career, whether it's in education, whether it is art administration, whether it is art handling, whatever, or just being a working artist, whatever it is that you decide to go into, they're going to more than likely be your point of contact to begin that journey. And so wanting to work with these people is
Yeah.
important.
And also, I understand that they are likely to be your contemporaries. Something that stuck out to me that was very poignant. My first year, I developed a relationship or rapport with a third year.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in your last year of grad school and you're working on your thesis, the stress is high, and the faculty is really harder on you to push you towards greatness. And when that happens, of course, it can impact your self-esteem at times. And one thing
Mm-hmm.
that she reminded herself is that when I graduate, I am going to have the same qualifications as the instructors.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So looking at them as not just, I like to say professional mentors, that's what I call faculty or teachers, and not looking at them as superior to you, but the work that you're doing is meant to get you to equal status of these people.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at them in that way will help you understand how much you want to engage with them, or if you feel comfortable engaging with them with your work. And also just seeing how they move in their art career, right? That's something very important to consider when you're looking at their CVs, and also looking at their ecosystem that they've kind of created or navigated through in the art industry. Because what you don't want is to have this staff full of people and they're kind of navigating in the
Insular.
same, in a very insularly, in these same kind of circles, right?
Right.
So that in the long run,
It's
it's
not going to
good.
help you.
It's not. It is good, and there are strengths to networking across, but you also want, especially when you're researching the faculty, you want to see how they've networked abroad or up,
Abroad.
or
Yes,
and what's the full breadth of their career and of their art network as well.
absolutely. And I think something, a testament to that within my experience is that one of the solo shows that I had right about when I was graduating from my program with you was through faculty member that was on my
Committee?
committee. Yes, that was on my committee. And we developed a great relationship working together and critiquing my work. And he learned to understand what I was doing and the value of what I was making, and gave quite relevant advice as to how to navigate both situations career-wise and how to really ask the right questions within my practice to develop myself. And I learned quite a lot from him. And then was given this opportunity to work with him, having this solo show. And even still today, up until a couple months ago, sent me an opportunity to show in another space. And so I think that it goes to show that if you partner and collaborate with faculty that has vested interest in your practice, that relationship can develop outside of the institution in a way that is beneficial for you both, because to be honest, if you become a success, they are also considered success.
It makes them look good, and it
Yeah.
also makes their program look good, and sways the easily swayable statistics.
Hmm.
Oh,
Absolutely.
definitely. So these are all things that you really want to investigate when you're just researching the institutions, really playing an active role in understanding the nitty gritty of the space that you look to inhabit and grow your career in. Um,
Hmm.
and what that also does is that gives you a little bit more clarity and understanding when it's time for that interview.
Yes, absolutely. There is a lot of preparation that you should be embarking on for your interview. We've shared so much of what you should be doing prior to that to just know where you're applying to and which schools are possibly the best fit for you. But in the actual interview, you've had a great application and you've been invited for an interview. These are some of the things that you should be doing. Have answers prepared for general MFA interview questions. We have a link in our description in our show notes for you to gather some of those questions that are well known. But you need to know where art fits in again in the context of art history and contemporary art. Explain why you want to do an MFA and why that particular program. These are often ballpoints of some of the things that you need to have prepared and what you're going to be asked to be in the high candidates of being then invited to come to that institution.
Okay. And like to unpack the interview a little bit more, because I had laser focus with this
Mm-hmm.
one school that I applied to. And I also,
Mm-hmm.
had the privilege of living in the city. So I kind of would just pop up on them and and
Marlon.
I was scheduling meetings with faculty members. I was emailing them and being like, "Hey, would love to schedule a time to meet and talk." So
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, I inadvertently set up my own interviews.
Okay.
So
So you never actually did an interview?
I never did an interview. So how kind of played out for me was I got connected with a student who was one of the kind of burgeoning stars out of the program.
Uh-huh.
And I connected with him on Instagram, the power of networking. So I
Yes.
connected with him on Instagram and asked to set up a time to meet up with him. I expressed, hey, I'm applying to grad schools. I'm interested in this school. Can I meet with you just to get like, the one-on-one on like what's going on here and
Yeah.
who to talk to. So he told me about his experience, but he also forwarded the names of people that I should contact in regard to applying. So he told me like which faculty members over the MFA application process. So I really formed a rapport with her. And then she gave me some tips and tricks on, how to make myself look more favorable. And my partner, who also at the time he was finishing his PhD, and he also worked at the institution. So he also gave like a few tips and tricks to make myself stick out. And one of the things was, yeah, just reach out to the faculty members and set up meetings. So
Huh.
I looked up their emails because that is
Yeah.
public information. And I was
Right.
like, hey, Professor, Mr., Miss So and so, I am
Yeah.
Marlon. I am interested in the program and I would love to talk to you. And I think I got to get in front like of about two faculty members and
Yeah.
have some really good in-depth conversations with them. And I also had my little portfolio. I carried my portfolio, I carried my CV and my
Yeah.
resume, and I put it in front of them. And I was just like, let me know what you think. And it's interesting because when I did get accepted into the program and I heard, my fellow cohort mates, you included, talking about the interview and who interviewed you, and I was just like, oh, that was not that wasn't a part of my story. So,
Wow, but
I
that was a good strategy. It was a good strategy though. It worked for you, Marlon, in a
and
way.
yeah, and I didn't even realize that. And I remember
Right.
after talking to the faculty member who was over the MFA application process, she became our professor in one of our courses. And this was the first semester, and I just talked about, I was a little nervous, and I was like, am I really made for this? And she was like, you, Marlon, in particular, she said an interesting word. She's like, you were relentless. And I was just like, and I didn't, that word kind of gave me a boost of confidence because I never think I find myself, I'm an introvert, and sometimes I can find myself very mild mannered and kind of go
Yeah.
with the flow. So to hear her use the word relentless during the application process, and that's why I was memorable. And that was the determining factor of them feeling that I was qualified and worthy to be accepted in the program made me, yeah, it made me reframe and relook at me as a person, and like
Yeah.
how it gave me an example of what I do is enough and is more
Yeah.
than enough, and
Right.
that I do have what it takes
That's
to get what I
amazing.
want, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
I'll never forget that she said, Marlon, you were relentless. We had to take you. Like we
Amazing.
like so, but I am interested in this interview process. So yeah, could you just kind of like share a little bit about what your interview process was like, and if you remember any like probing questions that almost
Right.
challenged that particular faculty member?
So my interview, I had two interviews. I interview at two state schools, one up north and one south. And the one up north, they really both asked around the same questions.
Hmm.
Some of the questions that I shared not long ago, I know I was asked, how does my work fit into the context of art history and contemporary art? And I already had prepared like artists that I was interested in and looking at, work I was looking at, and how I saw my work being relevant in that space and what inspires me and what I was pulling from to create what I have been currently creating. And then I also had been asked about why that particular program. And I had prepared the benefits of the program, the resources that they had available that I wanted to engage with, the people that were at that place that I wanted to work with and learn from. And in each of those institutions, I had that prepared to share.
Hmm.
And one institution in particular asked me about my teaching experience because I previously in undergrad, I was embarking upon a K through 12 certification and had essentially just stopped it when I really started to research how much I would earn as a K through 12 teacher. And then I also didn't quite care for it when I started to do practicum and actually be in the schools. And I realized that it just was not for me. I was like, I don't think that it's going to be worth the hard take putting myself in a space that I didn't even really have the passion to be in. And so they asked me about that experience of that program and what skills would I bring to their institution to benefit my teaching. And so that were the realm of my questions. But I think what each institution was most, I guess, interested in me was the questions that I asked.
Hmm.
And I,
What were some of those
I,
questions?
well, as you know, I am a very intense person and I can be very forward. And I was very forward. I asked questions about the benefits that students are offered, health benefits. I mean, I'm a grown adult. I want to know what those benefits are. I asked about my, specifically because going through states health costs different. And I'm very dollars and cents too. So that was one of my first questions. I also asked about my studio space, what does that look like? Because I think some of those institutions, one of them I did not go prior to applying. I think I had asked that question to one and not the other. I asked about resources, funding, how much funding I would be able to receive upon traveling if I needed to travel specifically for research purposes. Was that a benefit for students? I asked about the rigor of critiques and how do faculty support you in supplemental research. And I asked a lot of questions around my growth as a working artist.
It's almost as if you asked, bitch, what can you do for me?
I did. I was really focused on, I know I'm about to bring it. What are you going to bring to the table to help me get where I need to go? I had no bones about some of those questions I was asking. And yeah.
I love that. And that's very, very important. And again, that's coming to the table knowing this is what you can bring.
Mm-hmm.
And when you know what you can bring and when you know what you're looking for, you're having a totally different conversation with
Absolutely.
with the faculty. Now, this is not an interview. This isn't a one-sided interview. This is a two-sided interview. And now it goes from a conversation of how can I benefit, and it turns into how the institution can benefit from having you, into how can we both benefit from our affiliation with each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I want to say that with a caveat, mind you, I am still respectful in these interviews, in these spaces, still acknowledging that there is backing behind these institutions, but while considering that I still have value. So just want to make sure that you're not going into these interviews guns blazing. No, still be respectful, but know your value. That's the premise of this.
Know your value, definitely. And another important thing to research is the stipends. All programs that offer GA-ships or TA-ships, they do provide the information in regards to what they're paying their GAs and TAs. So it's important that you research that to see and research what other schools are offering, especially the schools that you're applying to, so you can strengthen your negotiation and compare them to each other.
Absolutely. That is so important. So at this point in time, you've had your interview, you have been accepted, and you've gotten an offer in that acceptance. And it's really now to understand how much you want to go to this school and how does this school rank within the other schools that you've been accepted to? And are you being offered a scholarship or a graduate assistantship? Because these two things are different, and how you are engaging at the institution is a little bit different. So at state schools that offer fully funded programs where you do not pay tuition, but in turn, you are doing research. If you're offered a scholarship to attend that institution, you are not essentially going to be an instructor of record and really get that experience of managing your own class. Oftentimes, students that are on scholarship are given a supplemental amount of funding that is technically a stipend, but they are often working maybe as an assistant in one of the departments in some capacity. They are supplementally supporting a department without, or even being a TA on a class without necessarily having to manage their own class. Now, a student that gets an offer that is a graduate assistantship, they are going to, at some point in their program, teach their own course, which in our case, in the first 2 semesters, I was offered to TA, meaning assist a professor, a full professor, and then in the next 2 years of the program, because it was a 3-year program, I then taught my own course, which is usually an undergraduate course. You're not developing a whole curriculum, but you're providing lessons. So in some cases, you may be provided lessons to teach your course, or you may have the opportunity to build your own lessons to teach in that course. And so I had the opportunity for 3 semesters. I chose to teach my own course in a ceramics department. And so I was able to manage all that comes with that, work with the studio tech, and really do all that it takes to run a class in that realm.
Yeah, and just going back to scholarships and stipends and how to research that and compare to other institutions, there is a website called phdstipends.com. We'll provide that link in the notes below. And you can use that as a resource to compare what schools are offering their grad students as far as those assistantships. And I also want to clarify as well the difference between maybe fully funded and a tuition waiver, because that kind of threw me off when I applied. When I got my acceptance letter and it said you have a tuition waiver, that does not exactly mean that they're giving you money. What that means is that it means what it says it means. They're waiving the tuition. So you don't have to pay the tuition, but what that means is you still need to, especially if you're coming from another location to the institution, you still need money to survive and live. And that comes in the form of scholarships. And some institutions, ours in particular, there was kind of like a tier system, right? So the top student received a tuition waiver, which was the standard. All of the grad students received a tuition waiver, but the top students would also receive a scholarship from the program. And then
which could be considered like a bonus. A signing bonus.
Yes, which was like, yeah, we can call it like a signing bonus. That's a really great comparison.
Yeah.
And then there was another tier of students that received the tuition waiver, the standard, and maybe didn't receive and maybe received a partial scholarship and then a grad assistantship, which is you working essentially for the department. And that's where the TA comes in, or you being instructor in record. And then some students didn't receive a tuition waiver, didn't receive a scholarship, but they did get the assistantship, which is when you're talking about a grad assistantship, you're pretty much getting paid pennies on the dollar, because essentially those are classes that they couldn't fill or they couldn't afford to fill for full-time professors. So they give you a little bit of money and they wrap it around, or they try to rationalize it or sell it as you're a student and you're getting experience, but you're also not getting a lot of money to live off of. So then that's when you have to consider maybe applying for other scholarships, maybe applying for other grants, taking out loans. Those are all components when you have the tuition waiver, so you don't have to pay extra for school, but you still have to pay to live. And also possibly pay for supplies. So that all plays a factor as well, as far as your package and understanding the language.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is why it is so important in this process to negotiate and what that will mean. There's a great link that we have also included in our show notes that provides a really insightful breakdown on how to go about this. What we learned is to really see how much you want to go to this school and prepare an honest email in response to their offer to really clearly say what you would need to be able to attend this school. If their offer is not giving you enough to live on, because to be honest, you need to be able to live in the state that you are going to be going to school in, ask for it. Ask for what you want. The worst that they're going to say is, no, we can't give you all of that, but this is what we can do. Then you go to the next institution, which is why it's so important to apply to multiple places. Go to the next institution and say, this is what I've been offered here, and I'd like to go to your school, but this is honestly what I would need and what it would take for me to go to that school. See if they counter it. People do this in the real world when it comes to applying to jobs. You can counter offers, you can negotiate. It goes the same in your education. This is still work you're going to be doing, work that they could pay someone to do for way more dollars. Mind you, we're still all getting poverty wages to do this work, but we have to make sure that to some degree, we are at least clearing zero.
Yes, yes.
Clear zero, guys.
And also discretionary budgets. That is a real thing. And what we found is through our experiences that even when departments or programs say they don't have money, there are still little pockets of money that they can dip into in order to make things work. They don't like to broadcast that. They don't like to make that common knowledge. So it's important that you show them that you understand that that is a thing and that is something, letting them know that, yes, I know that as an institution, you have discretionary incomes or discretionary budgets. What can qualify me to tap into those discretionary budgets?
Yeah, I think that part is a little bit tricky where you have to find ways to push back that is still respectful. I think that the link in the show notes, as I described, provides an email template as to how to really do that, considering all these things. It really gives you a starting point of starting with gratitude, thanking the institution for their consideration, indicating that this is a program that is ranking amongst the top of all that you have applied to. Share that and that you really appreciate the offer, but this is what it would financially take for you to really consider it. You specifically share in detail what other offers you have received and if it's something that they could counter in order to allow you to come to their institution, and make specific asks. Share that dollars and cents points as to what is needed. And I would caution against going overboard in the acts. Really try to make it reasonable. And, share whatever financial burdens that you are coming against at the time. Possibly that might be a way that the heart may meet and there will be funds that they can find to assist you in that. Because remember, they're an institution. Oftentimes there's a lot of foundations within the institution that offers support for various issues, whether it's for parents, whether it is for low income, so on and so forth. And acknowledge that it is still a privilege for you to have received this offer and, go from there. So I think that this Pro Fellows article gives a really great starting point to dictate your negotiation in a way that considers all that we have just shared.
Now we're at the point of the show where we want to hear from you, the listener. Join us on our Discord, the link found in our show description, to share your thoughts on these two questions. One, for current MFA students, how did you determine which program was right for you? And two, when you received your acceptance letter, did you feel that you could negotiate your offer? If so, what was that experience like for you?
Thank you for listening to our episode. The Hidden Critique is produced and hosted by us, Krystle Lemonias and Marlon Tobias. Episodes are edited by Kirsten Pettifor. Original music composed by Cesar Presa.
If you like the show, you can review and rate this podcast via Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You can also like, subscribe, and comment on our YouTube page.
For exclusive bonus content, subscribe to our Patreon at The Hidden Critique.
Or join the Hidden Critiques Discord page to engage directly with us, the host, and build community with fellow listeners.